A good afternoon, our dear viewers of Civic Space TV. Welcome to the Youth Roundtable. Today, a special edition of the Youth Roundtable. We bring you relevant and incisive discussions. As we speak today, COP26, which is a word you must have heard about, the biggest and we would say most significant conference on climate change under the auspices of the UN, is going on in Scotland. A few years ago, specifically 5 years ago, in Paris, almost all countries on earth sat and celebrated the various commitments they have been making over the question of climate change since 1995 when the first COP happened in Berlin. What is the question? The question is that the world is getting warmer, or otherwise what you can call climate change, and there is need for collective action from all countries, from all companies, and from all players. And so this conversation is supposed to inform what happens and does not happen. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our conversation today. For this, on my extreme right today, we have Gloria Nabaye. Gloria, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, Gloria is a research associate at Greece. So it's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and the politician, Moses Kidega. Moses is the Labor Affairs Secretary at the National Youth Council. The young people obviously have things to say and commit on climate change. So it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Council. I think moving forward, it's in order to refer to you as your worship, sir. And that is to say congratulations upon your nomination or appointment. I'm not sure of the correct term. But yes, we as young people and lovers of the young movement, we are proud of you. And we know you'll serve this country.
Yeah.
Okay,
in the
thank
best
you.
Of your abilities.
That will not save you from the very difficult question it can be. But yes, Judith is back. Judith Muvara is a lawyer and styles herself as an activist for the environment. Judith, welcome back.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, so starting with you, Gloria, the researcher. Many young people don't like this climate change topic. And it's a topic that many people call elitist and abstract, that is hard to understand. But the world is now meeting on this topic. Help us break this down. What is climate change?
I don't want to define climate change as just what they're talking about, because it has very many faces as we speak today. But I can say that climate change entails issues that deal with, how we are surviving in the next few years, what the different human activities that are endangering our environment, and our ability to be able to be sustained in this. So that then we then have to talk about issues of sustainability. So climate change is, multi-faced. It deals with human activities that degrade, that, deplete, that in any case create change in environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That maybe I should bring in Moses at this point.
Yeah.
She says there are very many sides to climate change. So maybe you can give us your side.
Thank you, Comrade Council. I think I'm the less qualified panelist today to discuss or partake of this conversation around climate change, but well, I'll try to give in my own perspective. I think like Comrade Gloria has put it right, climate change entirely involves around the continuously evolving temperature or temperatures on a global scale, or what we call global warming.
Yeah.
So to me, when we discuss climate change, we are simply discussing the change in humidity and the change in temperature across the globe. And maybe further, we shall discuss maybe the causes and how best we think the world and Uganda, in this particular case, can move forward or partake of the ongoing conversation. But in a short or in a nutshell, I think to me, that is it about climate change, briefly.
Wow, thank you. And Judith, which is your side of this animal called climate change?
I think, like my colleague said, it has a lot of faces, but it can contain energy. It has something to do with the fossil fuels. It contains a lot. So this whole climate change and agreements going on, and they're all coming into agreement to protect our environment, because there's a lot of destruction that has been going on, deforestation all over the world, not particularly Uganda. And so we're trying to harmonize with, like trying to harmonize the nature.
Okay. Interesting. And so, back to you, Gloria. Why should an ordinary Ugandan, a young person out there probably unemployed or not in school, care about grandiose ideas like climate change? Isn't this just another opportunity for presidents and ministers and to get allowances and fly around?
Actually, no. The realities of climate change and what it entails is the question of sustainability. So we need to be able to demystify sustainability beyond what has been described in the Millennium Development Goals, but also to speak to the reality that this earth was here, sustained life, and should be able to sustain us for very many other years to come. So questions that should be pertinent for all of us, even that one that is like, I don't want this to be part of the conversation we have. They should be very critical for them, because our survival depends on whether we can manage the vast changes in our climate. For example, today when we speak, in 2019 we had the advent of the 7 rains, and that's when we had also landslides in Bududa. The question the youth today should be asking is, in 2050, will Bududa be able to sustain human life if we do not do anything about climate change, or if we don't push for climate action? So those are the key questions that we bring to the table, and everyone should be concerned, because life itself will be sustained by how we manage our environment. I beg to end there for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks like climate change is really communicating to us. Because there's a very heavy downpour, so we may have to speak up such that the conversation keeps going. Yeah, but Moses, Gloria mentioned something to do with landslides, and I think it was El Nino a few years ago. And so part of climate change, besides just the warming, are also the changes in weather patterns. And so maybe from a practical point of view, do you think we have had any impact of climate change in Uganda? Because some people say really this is not our problem.
Thank you very much, Comrade Moderator, for that good question. Let me pick up from where Gloria stopped and quote Antonio Guterres, who is the United Nations Secretary General. Yesterday, while addressing the congregation, he said that we either stop this or it will stop us.
Yeah.
Okay? So meaning we either stop all these bad practices that are continuously endangering our climate and our environment, or the nature will take its course and we shall be the ones to pay for the price. So to me, drawing it back to the local context, first of all, there are over 100 countries that have convened in Scotland to discuss this whole climate change. Uganda should evaluate itself basing on the 4 core principles as to why these over 100 countries have convened. And before I came here, I endeavored to read a couple of them. And the first principle that is being argued, or that is being fronted, is that the globe and the world at large must secure a global zero by mid-century. Okay? And like you said earlier on, the aspect of the humidity and the degrees, the country or the globe is looking at, by mid-century, can we have a globe that is emitting less than 1.5 degrees? But also to achieve this, there are certain recommendations that are being discussed at the world level. One of which is that we must accelerate the phase out of coal. Okay, you know, coal is
for a fuel.
Yes, a fuel. Okay, that once emitted into space causes a very big damage.
Yes, we had a taste of the weather showing us what climate change means and how to get some jackets and understand the environment better. But I think now our sound is clearer and we can get back to our conversation. Moses, you were telling us why Uganda should care about climate change. Why should Uganda care?
Thank you very much, Comrade Moderator. I think Uganda, first of all, is not doesn't live in isolation from the rest of the world. So I want to believe that the challenges of the world, one way or another, become challenges of Uganda. We have looked at global challenges like, for example, the pandemic that we are undergoing. It cannot be perceived as a China problem because it did originate in Wuhan. It is perceived now as a global challenge because the rest of the world is affected. So in the same spirit, the argument or the crisis of climate change is not unique or does not spare Uganda as a country. And I come from a heritage of farmers. My parents are farmers. I'm also a farmer. My mother used to grow simsim in around mid-year. But now, over the past couple of years, she is even not sure of what month in the year she should grow her simsim. This is simply because of the continuously changing climate that has become more unpredictable. And my mother is only one of the so many Ugandans, and myself also, I'm a farmer. We are two of the so many Ugandans who partake of the agricultural sector as a means of survival, but also as a country, we do rely a lot on agriculture for our both domestic survival, but above all our foreign exchange and exportation, among other issues.
So Moses,
Uganda...
Moses, just on that point, if I may ask you, do you think your mother knows that the season has changed because of climate change? She could possibly be thinking God is angry with us. We have sinned so much, and these are punishments from God. What's the relationship between the season changing?
Yeah. Of course, my mother, being a lay person, might not understand exactly the root cause of the changing temperatures and the changing climate. But we are privileged, me and you, to be here at this particular point in time to have an opportunity to discuss about the continuous changing climate and how best can we address it. So, yes, to agree with you, she may not understand, but it is our responsibility as people who understand to attempt to digest and make sense out of it. So back to the argument that, yes, Uganda is not in isolation with the rest of the world. So the concerns of climate change and its devastating effects concern us. Because we cannot say we aren't concerned, yet people in Bududa are crying every day. And they live in uncertainty about whether landslides will come tomorrow or they will come the following day. We cannot be comfortable, yet the people of Kasese, River Nyamwamba, bursts its banks almost every time and again. So we cannot avoid this conversation. We cannot shy away from it as a country because the devastating effects affect the core of our existence.
Okay, thank you, Moses. Let me go to Judith. You're almost confusing me there, so let me try Judith. Because you see, Judith, we are trying to understand how really climate, you see this topic, it's very complex and many people really just shut it out. And you know, he's talking about landslides and I'm trying to think, my lawyer mind is trying to think, where's the relationship between climate change or global warming and the landslide? You know? Yes. So, you know, help us. Is climate change here really in Uganda?
Is it realistic? Are you saying?
Yeah, like does it exist for us? Like, are we having any climate change
right
in
now?
Uganda?
You are breathing because of these trees, because they provide oxygen. Your lungs benefit from that. You benefit from these trees around us. Every Ugandan, I think even the Constitution says it, we have a right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Now, why do you think this whole thing about climate? I think people don't understand why it is necessary, but and which is why we are here to.
Yes, yes.
First, like I told you, these things help you your life. You breathe because of these trees.
Yeah.
Your why you cut. I think when we are advocating for planting more trees and bringing out Mother Nature, the climate change also goes with biodiversity, where some animals are getting killed all the time. We're trying to bring all the natural resources, all the natural environment to restore all that, because we believe it helps, that we have to be eco-friendly with this environment, because it helps us and as well we help it. So that's why it is necessary for us to actually adopt to the climate change.
But when you talk about breathing, we are breathing good. There's nobody who has choked in
Are you
Uganda.
sure?
But
because
why
there's no air.
when they cut down trees, what will you breathe? Because the whole point is these trees are being cut. We're advocating for people not to cut down trees all the time. That's why the Muvara people, the Goma forest people are advocating for not cutting down the trees, because if they cut them down, then what are you going to breathe in the near future? What will your children? You might breathe, yes, but your children in the near future, what will they have? And you have, usually when we used to get sick at home, the villages, they give us these normal herbs to get malaria, cough. Even right now, while having COVID, we've been steaming all these herbs, because it's the climate, because these are the herbs that nurture us. So when you cut them down, when you don't advocate for them, your kids will not benefit maybe then for those. Even medicine is made out of these herbs. So in a way or two, you benefit.
I think I see why people struggle, because really, have any people anywhere in the world failed to breathe?
Because now it's still there, because we still
So how
have
do
that
we know?
monitoring.
Because you see, President Trump, for example, and his administration, actually withdrew out of this whole climate change talk and are saying, no, it's just propaganda. There's nothing going on.
Yeah.
But that's why I bring in Gloria to say, is this not just propaganda? You see, you're talking about breathing. We are breathing good.
And that is where I want to divert from you, Council.
Yes.
Because when you say we are breathing good, the reality of the matter is, if you walked in Kampala today and you tried to breathe without your mask, thank God for masks. Without your mask, you would want to puke. You know, we have, first of all, the cars that we import are dead, so they emit the worst of the gases that you can ever. The fuels that they also consume. On a regular taxi, want to go to Shell to take V-Power. They'll go to the random diluted fuels to be able to run, and you have a black smoke happening. And then we are at the advent of industrialization, so we are busy and we are emitting greenhouse gases. And you tell the difference when you go into the up country and then you come to Kampala. You will tell the difference in change of air.
Yeah.
You will tell.
Sure.
So people even look forward to going, oh, I need to go and, breathe some good air. So it's a conversation that is alive with us. But then to what you say, do we really need to have this conversation? Climate change is not a hoax. Trump lied. And I think one of the key issues that COP26 is looking to is the return of America with the Biden administration in their commitment to climate action and the future of what they want to do as America. But the realities of what is happening is that you might not see it now, but it is happening every other time you walk into Kampala, as it has rained today. And then there is a flood happening from an hour of rain. You have an extreme flood happening. You have people drowning. I think you've seen people who have drowned in manholes in Uganda, but it's just because the rain was extremely, it wasn't a lot, but there was no channel for it to be able to, to go. And that also speaks anyway for something different than just rain or climate. But I want us to believe that it matters that we have this conversation, but not just that we see the adverse effects that are happening in the moment, but that even the future banks on the fact that we care about now. I was recently listening to, the conversations from the Soviet 26 on how the future will look like for us. And I'm glad it is teenagers, preteens that are, championing this cause, perhaps they see what we are not seeing.
Concerned about that.
Yes,
future.
perhaps they are concerned about a future that we are choosing to ignore. But futures are built in the present. So it is important. It's not a hoax.
Okay. So let's say it's important. It's important we want to breathe fresh air and all these things. It's important we want to preserve animals. But we have had incidents in this country where I think it was actually Honorable Kahindo Tafiri. There was some fire around using a wetland, and we were saying, look, we need employment, we need money, we need to industrialize. And you're saying you want to maintain frogs? Like, really? How do we maintain frogs when we don't have jobs, when we don't have something to eat? You are saying, you activists, you're fighting for frogs, but look, there are people here without jobs and without food. And we need to encroach on these spaces and see that we industrialize. And tied into that is also the conversation of the fact that the biggest emitters like the United States, like China, the entire African continent only contributes about 4%. Now you can imagine Uganda. So these countries industrialized, and got where they are, where we aspire to be. But now it's like you're telling us you can't industrialize. Is this not an imperial plot to keep us poor?
And I hear you, because that is the argument a lot of people are having, that the concerns of climate change have a disparity in the fact that us, we are emerging economies. We are in the emerging. We are just developing. We are the advent of our industrial life, and we are speaking of reducing our emissions pre-industrial era. And we are just beginning. So there is, in the geopolitics of this world, there is that disparity of these people have already industrialized, and yet they are the biggest emitters of these greenhouse gases. And we are at the advent of our revolution in industrialization, and we are asked to commit to change in climate, to dealing with issues in climate. But I also want to believe that whatever will happen in the future is still not going to spare us. The conversation around why we need to care is that we then need to create environmental assessment, platforms, and how we can then deal with environmental issues as they happen. As we industrialize, do we have a plan, to create sustainability? Do we have a plan while we are pushing for our industrialization? It speaks for fossil fuels. We just discovered our oil. And one of my great friends once said that, like, I can't imagine us finding oil and then the world changing to renewables.
Yeah, actually, I was bringing that question to Moses. Yes.
Because those are key issues. But these issues need to also help us see the future. It's not that we are going to stop to industrialize. And it's not that the frogs won't thrive. But can we have the frogs thrive amidst our industrialization? And those are the sticky areas people are having with people pushing for industrialization and the environmental activists. Can we save for the future while we build for the future? I want to end there.
Yeah, so you're making a case for both ways, but we don't see that possibility yet. You can't have it both ways, can you?
Yes, we can.
How?
Yes, we can.
Maybe yes. I've had a very strong yes, you can. Yeah.
You can't
how can we?
Okay, this is what I think about your wetland saga and the frogs. I want to think this employment that you talk about and the climate aspect is long term.
Yeah.
You that are looking for employment can have employment anywhere. Elsewhere.
Well, someone who slept hungry cannot understand you when you say they cannot grow their rice in that swamp because you want to preserve it for future generation. They won't even be there to produce the future generation. They want to grow the rice now and eat it. It's real.
But all I'm saying is, this is a long-term kind of aspect. When we're doing climate change, when we're planting this tree to grow maybe in the next 10 years. So it won't even benefit you, most probably. It might just benefit your kids. So much, you who is fighting for employment and all because of that wetland, because of that forest that you're cutting down, you need charcoal, you need
Yes.
to go ahead. There are other things you can do.
Like for charcoal,
Yeah,
what can Ugandans do?
They are, what are they called? Briquettes?
Briquettes.
Yeah, that one.
Briquettes.
Briquettes. No, those things you can.
You cannot
they're
imagine how
alternative-
you're looking before my viewers.
They're
Say that
alternative.
Ugandans can. This is a very privileged position. Like people in these communities that you see, you could not even pronounce them. These people have never
may I
even
have a
seen
problem
them.
with
They don't know about these things.
They can
What
be,
are briquettes?
I think the best way is maybe for a government to come and educate these people about briquettes.
Okay, what are they? Do you
It's
know
an
them?
alternative version of charcoal, using burning the charcoal.
So what are they made out of?
Renewables.
There's some, I think it's sand and I don't know what they mix clearly. I don't know
Yeah,
what they mix.
because that would be a very good alternative, but I don't know. You, Gloria, do you have better information about briquettes
Well,
as an alternative?
we are far behind in the realities of renewable energy. I want to believe that, but we are not unredeemable. What I want to say is that the concerns of our country shouldn't be that we failed to push for climate action at the level at which developed countries should be able to, but that we do sustainable measures. We have environmental impacts and environmental assessments that work for us.
Okay.
We will not be able to all own gas, even as good as gas is. You get what I'm saying? And it is a renewable, but we may not be able to, all have briquettes because not everyone stays home. Not everyone stays home and not everyone uses briquettes. Firewood still remains the most consumed energy in Uganda. But you're speaking to a generation that doesn't even know what electricity looks like. So there is a disparity in the access to electricity, access to these energies as we continue to go on. So when you speak for briquettes, you're speaking to a very small population.
That's why I'm saying the government should educate the communities behind.
The population.
So they can.
So I'm going to come to the aspect of that education, but I need you, and this is a very complex area, so we need to share this burden. I have heard you mention things about swamps and forests, and I'm just wondering, is climate change the same as environmental degradation or conservation? Are they different? And if they're the same, why do people say climate change? Why can't we just talk about the environment? Because the environment makes better sense to many of us. But when you take it to climate change, it's more complex. Is it one and the same thing?
Because climate change is diverse. It harbors a lot. It harbors that aspect of deforestation and all the environment. It harbors biodiversity. It harbors energy. It harbors a lot in it. So that's why we just shelter it into climate change.
Yeah.
Okay, I would really want to hear from each one of you about this.
Thank you, Comrade Moderator. To me, I think this whole argument of climate change, to me, it's like love. Love can really never be measured. It's hard to measure how much someone loves you. For example, there is no love meter or something, but you can feel the love. Okay. So in this same context, I don't think we can begin to exactly measure how bad climate change has been. But we have felt it. Okay?
No, I'm not asking for a measure.
The people of Bududa have felt what it means for a country or for a community not to have defenses in terms of trees. Okay, because when a river bursts its Kasese, for example, when a river bursts its bank, and you have trees, they act as defenses. Okay, one of the core principles as to why COP is convening is to encourage countries and communities to build defense systems. That when things like floods happen, there are trees that shock absorb, and people don't lose their livelihoods, people don't lose their houses, among other things. Okay, so to me, we can never downplay the devastating effects of climate change.
Moses, and maybe Gloria may come in to support us. What I want here is the difference between environment and climate change. Is it the same thing?
I think the two are
Let me
more or
pick
less
from
the same.
there,
Yes.
Moses. Environmental degradation is almost just like a small subset of what climate change is.
Okay.
Our human activity is responsible for the greater part of climate change. as we experience it today globally. So when we speak to issues of environmental deforestation, swamp reclamation, industrialization, there are very many different areas that are brought together to create the change in our climate. And that speaks to issues of, you have mountaintops melting, you have mountains erupting, you have a change in seasons. For us in Uganda, we have 4 seasons, and then you have a change. You're like, Pananga, it used to rain in January. It's now it used to shine in January. Now it's raining. So it's everything that speaks to the bigger. So environmental degradation is almost like a snippet to what we are speaking for.
So to help our viewers, if I can marry what you all have said and maybe my elementary science and geography, when we talk about the climate, we are talking about the global temperature and then the weather over a long period of time. Is that so? Weather patterns over a long period of time.
And every other thing that speaks to that. It may not be just the weather pattern.
You're forgetting the animals and all. You have to, it also...
The ecosystem.
The ecosystem. It was also part of it.
That's climate?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when we talk about the environment...
No, that's...
Yes. When you talk about the environment, because I'm trying to make sense of this whole thing.
You see, comrade, just actually before we got to camera, we were having a casual conversation, and we seem to agree that how do we relate the environment and the climate? Now, the environment is constituted, for example, of trees. Okay, we have trees and all these things. Now, when you cut these trees, and tomorrow there are emissions from all these cars and all these things, trees that would have played a role in absorbing these emissions now cannot play them anymore because the trees are not there. Okay, so these emissions now go straight into circulation, and that is what we agreed earlier on as global warming. So the argument between, or the semblance between the environment and climate change is very significant. We can never ignore it. But Council, let me speak to the aspect of industrialization.
Yes, I actually wanted to take you now. I know that's a political area, and sometimes you call yourself a Pan-Africanist. I wanted to ask, what are you, nationalists and Pan-Africanists, saying about this thing where we are only contributing 4%, which almost is insignificant, but then the big sharks who are producing for the entire global market are saying, stop, you can't preserve. Yes.
I think the world, and in this case Uganda, finds itself at crossroads because there is the world is continuously becoming capitalistic in nature. Okay, where there is more need now more than ever for every country to see how to build its economic base and produce more goods on the international market and have meaningful contribution towards global trade, among other things. So that urgency, that need to make money and to build economies has led us into what we are seeing today. That at the expense of everything else, we would rather have an economy that is working. That we would rather have Chinese coming from China, and we can cut down an entire forest for them to set up an industry so that tomorrow they can contribute towards our GDP and our foreign exchange. Okay, so the argument of capitalism is continuously becoming more and more popular, and to me, the effects of climate change can only get worse. Okay, because we are not going to stop capitalism here, but trying to relate it to the whole powerful countries and Europe and China asking us not to industrialize, yet they've already, done the same, is that you see, Comrade Matanda, when China or America had its industrialization, the air that we breathe is not different. Okay, so the effects of that industrialization equally affect Africa as a continent or Uganda as a country. So we can never live in isolation in the sense of maybe trying to downplay the argument and trying to maybe water down the whole story of we need to preserve the environment, we need to conserve nature, among other things. But like I was trying to explain to you, we have Karamajongs here in Uganda. They walk about 5-10 kilometers before their cows can access green grass or can access water. Okay, so the challenges are with us here. We should not make this a European challenge. We have the effects are being seen here in Uganda. So for us to try to make it about the European and they're trying to maybe control the world and this whole neo-colonialism, I think it's us missing the point. Because if Matanda, and I'm glad that you come from Bududa, where some of these challenges of climate change are being seen. Okay, so you more than any of us should appreciate the need for us to embrace the need to preserve the environment and the need to take serious climate change.
Well, for us, we think our forefathers are punishing us for diverting from our ways. But that you know, Moses makes a very good case for global responsibility and the fact that the effects of climate change are with us. But the effects of poverty are also with us. The effects of backwardness are with us. Our budget and our revenue often falls in deficits. Now, God, being very generous, gives us a resource called oil. Now, when this resource comes, I've seen that part of the agenda of this COP26 is to see that we move to a carbon emission-free world, which in other words means we cannot extract our oil. We're talking about solar, we're talking about wind energy, we're talking about the so-called clean fuels. What is your view? How do we go about this? Because we really need that oil to come out, and we get that 2 billion every year, $2 billion every year to build infrastructure, to educate our children, to have a good life.
While advocating for climate change, we're not saying don't use charcoal, don't cut down trees. You can cut down, but plant more. We're saying you can use that oil, but again, we're trying to say we have to be eco-friendly. Why we are trying to do all these things, extract the oil, use the fuels and all, we have to be eco-friendly. At least there are some other things you can do to replace the same. So as you extract the oil, it's okay to use the oil in the near future, but at least do something that will be eco-friendly with with the whole climate.
But when people are talking about zero emissions,
no, they didn't say. They said, I think the Paris Agreement was saying cut the
to net zero.
Yeah, net zero.
To net zero. Pre-industrial era.
Very ambitious.
Yeah.
Very ambitious
stuff. So how do we achieve this? Is this not
by 2050? Meanwhile,
the
20th century.
So don't you think maybe we should rush extracting our oil and
just to come in right there, I think that over ambition will of course be curtailed by the slowness or the sluggishness towards the world embracing some of these technologies, because that same COP or that same agreement attempts to explain to us the means through which we can reduce these carbon emissions, and one of which is that we must embrace electronic maybe cars and locomotives. Okay, but with the current deficiency in technology, where even we have so many countries who still don't appreciate that a car runs on an engine, then how do we then begin to discuss electronic cars? So I think the gap in technology will curtail this very ambitious aspiration of having net zero emissions by 2050. Because even China that is saying that, do they have electric cars? And if so, how many? Or America that is trying to push for this, how many electric cars have they produced? So the world is at crossroads, but we simply have to see and understand how best we can maneuver through this with the challenges withstanding.
Okay, so you know, by the way, China and America, they are not necessarily the ones pushing for this, but we see that they have shown commitment. And I'm just wondering, Uganda and many African countries don't have a very good history of negotiating very good deals from global conversations like this. Can a Uganda now today have hope, or an African, that because these are negotiations, you know, you take this, you give me this, and it seems like usually we negotiate very bad deals. Can we have hope that on this question of climate change we could negotiate a good deal?
I think it was on this same TV that I at one time discussed international organizations. Because even in amongst the 4 aspirations of the COP conference, there's an argument of climate financing. And in this, they tend to, or attempt to, explain the role of international financial institutions. But let me discuss international organizations as a whole, okay? Is that, you know, the international society is anarchy in nature. There is no international government, there is no international police, there is no international judiciary, okay? So there will always be a challenge in terms of implementing these United Nations resolutions. And the will or lack of will to implement these resolutions entirely lie on the sovereign states, because, you know, states are sovereign.
Yeah.
United Nations cannot come and cane Uganda or maybe issue sanctions if we fail to maybe abide to any of those resolutions. So to me, yes, whereas those resolutions will be passed, the will or the sovereignty to implement them still lies on a country. But also, this is not a business deal being brokered, that maybe we are going there to sell maybe our cotton, and then the UN or maybe the USA has to give us back maybe dollars. No. This is an issue of humanity. Okay, so I don't think we are there to negotiate as a country. We are there to survive. Where we have reached, it isn't about who has the money, it's about our common survival as a human nature. That tomorrow, if USA, for example, in its continuous industrialization, continues to harm the globe or harm the humidity of the world, we shall also be affected as Africans and as Uganda. So
but
it's an argument of humanity.
Yeah, but Moses, you see where it becomes a deal. If you have emitted so much carbon dioxide and caused us this problem, and I have not, and I have the challenges that you solved through emission, it's only fair that we have a conversation, maybe around things like carbon trading, you know, maybe around things like, okay, if we are not going to construct this, we're not going to extract the oil, then help us have clean energy or bring these amounts of money for us to do ABC, like, that's the part. So don't you think if we just go there and we are saying this is about humanity, while other people have moved ahead and we are still backward, don't you think that would bring a bad day?
Let me come in there because it's very contentious. The key issues that are happening in COP26 speak to the fact that every country comes with an ask. I bring something to this table that I want to be effected or to be agreed on. And different institutions also come with asks. The Women Deliver initiatives will come, the Soviet 26 will come, the children will come. So different people, pre-COP and even during COP, have different negotiations. They guide the conversation as it happens.
Okay.
But what you speak to also speaks to then what can we do? If we have Europe and North America as the bigger emitters, can we then tax highly the high emitters?
Yes.
Can we then monitor? How do we create trade-offs? I think that is what he is speaking to.
Yes.
But the other issue that also I hear you say is, what's the stake for every other country that shows up to this COP26? The Paris Agreement, as it happened in 2015, is binding to every country legally, but the nationally determined contributions of every country are chosen by the countries. So Uganda will come back home and create a Climate Action Act and say, as Uganda, we will do this in regard to climate change, because it's inward looking as much as it's outward looking. So the stake Uganda will bring, or the action plans Uganda will bring to COP26 speak for what Uganda will do. They may not necessarily be legally binding on the global scale, but they speak to what they assented to in the Paris Agreement. So that is where we stand in time. And then it speaks to what then can we refine as we walk into COP, as COP26 happens. What can then countries do that they've not done in the past 5 years? And that is where the negotiation then begins. Then we speak to issues. Can we increase tax? Can we can no longer just speak of, Fridays for future, but then can we have, action plans? Can we push for investments in renewables, like a deliberate push for investment in renewable energy? I know organizations that have stopped funding foundations that have stopped funding organizations that push for fossils. And then you also have people that will push for issues like Stop ECOP. So there are different people.
What is Stop ECOP?
Stop ECOP is stop our the ECOP. The ECOP is a pipeline that we are building between Tanzania and Uganda to you know, help our oil move.
And earlier on you mentioned something like Fridays for Future. What is
Fridays
that?
for Future are climate change activists that push the narrative of climate change is here with us. So we have strikes every Friday for on behalf of climate. So you have sit-down strikes across the world
on Friday.
It's a Greta Thunberg movement. I mean, she woke up on a Friday morning and said, I'll have a school strike to actually help people understand that this climate issue is important.
School, is that a child?
Yes. There are children at the forefront of this, like I said. 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds are pushing for climate.
Are we sure they're not being manipulated by some propagandists?
I am very sure they are known. Children today are aware of issues that we may not be able to articulate well. As a 15-year-old in my time, I was thinking of very different things. These children have been, you know, awakened to the realities of things that are happening.
Yes.
But that notwithstanding, age shouldn't be the at the center of this conversation, but that they speak to what we should be doing. So then climate financing becomes very relevant for us to be able to push for renewables, to be able to phase out coal, to be able to curtail deforestation, because then there we now invest in afforestation, in planting trees, in going green, in eco-life. And there was a gentleman that told me that we can actually industrialize but be eco-friendly. Be eco-friendly.
That was Judith's.
And that was Judith's point. We can't be eco-friendly. We may not have electric cars as of now, but we can then have things like, for example, we now stopped importing 2005 downwards. Please don't bring. So those little contributions that we are doing to averting environmental issues speak for what the future then can be like. It's a transition. We're not going to wake up and just...
Thank you. You mentioned something that sends me to Judith as we actually move towards bringing this conversation to an end. Judith, she talked about Climate Change Act. That's actually a law that Uganda enacted this year. I must tell you that from where I stand, I have, over the years, Uganda did not look like it's very serious on these matters of environmental conservation and matters climate change. We started off in 1962 with over 50% forest cover. I'm told we are now at 80%.
Yeah.
That means maybe in the next 5-10 years, we may move to zero forest cover in the country. But it seems like the country has woken up. They have now enacted the climate change law. And earlier on we were talking about education. One of the requirements is to embed climate change education into the education system, to require all entities that present budgets, the budgetary framework, to show compliance with climate change, either in preserving or even matters like reforestation. Should we be hopeful that finally our government is responsible?
Well, you can have the hope, but don't raise the hope so
Don't
high.
overdo it.
Because we've had very good laws on paper. But implementation is another thing. Maybe they have. I think it was a 2019, but it was passed this year. But I think it was in April, and up to now it has not been gazetted. And I'm told when we tried to ask Mama Muvara, the State Minister for Environment at some point, and then we had no answer because we think there are people that are trying to downplay the whole thing to be gazetted, the act to be gazetted, so we can actually implement. We can implement. I think there was an issue to do with people using polythene bags. I think I don't know for how many times we've had government
back and forth,
all the time, but implementation zero. So we've had very good laws. People, they want to vacate wetlands. People planting rice in there, they want to vacate them, but zero action. So don't raise your hopes, I can say.
So maybe now that
But
we move towards the end, so what should we do?
I think the main thing is even those people who are in the wetlands, how about you go talk to them why there is need for them not to go in those wetlands, create awareness for these indigenous people out there in the village. Like you said, people don't understand this whole concept of climate change. I think the whole thing, people should be educated. They create awareness, tell them, look here people, water levels are lowering. This time you've seen, I think it was in July 20 when they said we used to have 6,000 cubic meters and
July
now
2020.
2021 actually,
Yeah,
even
even
2021.
2021.
Oh yeah, we used to have 600 something, 6,000, and now we are at 4,000. Like we are reducing. Tell them there is need to be eco-friendly, to live in harmony with nature. I think the 2050 agenda is all about living in harmony with nature. You can do the fuels, you can do cut down the trees because we can't live without cutting them. We need paper to start with, which is made out of trees. So
go and dig it.
Actually, when I saw people carrying books, I was wondering which activities.
Don't worry, we'll digitalize later.
Yes.
Maybe in future. That's why we're saying 2050 agenda.
Yeah.
Right now we are looking at steps to go to that level. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We are bringing this conversation to an end, and so maybe I could have parting shots from each one of you, starting with you, Moses.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me start by re-echoing the commitment of the National Youth Council towards building an ecosystem-friendly environment. And to that effect, on the International Youth Day this year, we launched a project to plant 60 million trees by 2025. So the National Youth Council is committed towards addressing the challenges of our time.
Sounds good.
Yes, but also speaking on the argument of government, I think our government needs to change its approach because they are more reactionary, than having sustainable plans. Because each time we see maybe landslides or maybe floods or whatever it is, it's when our Ministry of Disaster Preparedness then gets up to go and give maybe relief food and all those things. So they are more reactionary than having sustainable measures. And yet in this COP26, we are seeing countries coming together to say, let us build sustainable defense systems so that the floods don't take you by surprise. You have built defense systems that are there and they can withstand the devastating effects. Then conclusively, I think let's just encourage everyone else to really embrace this as a challenge of our time and to take it as serious as anything else. It's a pandemic of its own. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Pandemic on its own.
Yes, Gloria.
Yeah. In concluding, I want to speak to the asks of COP26. One, we push for climate financing, so that we have enough money to push for the different issues that are important in averting the climate effects. And then we need also to push for digitalization, especially as a country. So then we can now start to speak for issues of renewable energies, and a migration into the fourth industrial revolution. I'll speak to issues of AI and all those things. And lastly, we need to be able to adapt and protect the communities that are indigenous and the natural habitats. That includes, increasing on our eco-world, gazette areas that are friendly to just, plant trees and build together. I know trees are very political in nature. As a country, we feel like, don't tell us to plant trees. But I believe that the future will be built on each stepping stone that we contribute as a collective. So that is it. So for me, that's all.
Thank you, Gloria, and yes, Muvara.
Oh, well, I'll remind our viewers that it is because of the climate that we are still breathing, much as you tried to. But I think we came
to consensus building.
At some point, we come to a consensus. So we agree that we breathe because of these trees. And I encourage maybe our viewers to plant more trees. Yes, you can cut a little, but as you cut, reforestation is necessary. And maybe to go with you see these trees, for example, in the forests, it harbors a lot of animals. So when they are cut down, these animals don't know where to go. So it is. That's why we say we have to be eco-friendly. At least know that there's an impact that causes, and try to be eco-friendly with the environment. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Muvara. Thank you, Moses, and thank you, Gloria, for allowing to give us time to have this difficult conversation. And to you, our viewers, the difference between human beings and other animals is the capacity to understand the environment, to predict the future, and try to shape it in our favor. So don't allow to just be ordinary and look for daily bread. Be concerned to understand what the future holds. At the end of the day, when we have droughts, when we have flooding, when there's no food, when there are landslides, you will be affected, trust me. So it's important that we all pay attention to these complex topics. I think none of my panelists here is a scientist, but I was hearing a lot of science. Maybe next week we shall get scientists to even sound more complex. We were hoping that the artists will break down these things to the easier terms that we all understand. But the idea is that we need to pay attention to these things. We need to, you can do further research or, to understand where your role can be, whichever position you hold in society. I still encourage you to follow our pages if you haven't, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, make your comments on all these platforms, and maybe, just maybe, we can build a better world. See you next week.